Thokozile Madonko joins us now, a researcher at the Wits Southern Centre for Inequality Studies. Thokozile, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So let's start with a general question, just to see where your thoughts lie and maybe hone in on some specifics. Your take on the postponement of the budget to 12 March and the reason for that happening?
So it's interesting, and I think as everybody grapples with it, and many people will write up about this in a couple of years' time, but I think the consensus really is that this is very normal for coalition governments, and in some respects, it often plays out when they're trying to pass the budget, as opposed to trying to table the budget. So, in some ways, we have seen a situation where they've preempted the kind of fighting that could happen in the halls of Parliament. But also, having said that, I think it's a pity that the minister didn't table his money bills this afternoon to allow for public debate over the proposals that he was going to make around the VAT or infrastructure spending or health spending or whatever it might be, defence spending. That should have come up for debate within Parliament. And also Parliament is then able to call members of the public, like any other piece of legislation, to debate it. They can have inquiries into particular panels about particular issues. So if it was a VAT increase, we've seen previously with the VAT increase that Parliament called for a special hearing over the last increase that we saw. So they could have done the same this time around. So in some ways, I think it's a little bit of a loss for democratic practice and participation, and really opening up the space of really making the budget a democratic process, which it hasn't been under the ruling party of the ANC. And so a government of national unity could have presented an opportunity for us to really, as a nation, debate our fiscal policy.
Except it wouldn't be a debate. Everybody who's out of government would say no to a 2% VAT, would say no to any kind of tax increase. Nobody who is going to be poorer as a result of a tax increase, no matter how long you debate, no matter how much public participation there is going to say, oh yeah, okay, you've convinced me, that's a good idea. 1.8 percentage point increase in VAT, good, excellent, let's get on with it. I mean, it ends up being a debate for the sake of debate, and is really that what we want?
But that's what we've been having for the past 30 years. We've been having this very ceremonial arrangement around the budget. I mean, in some ways, you could say, why bother even opening it up for public participation? It's enshrined in our Constitution. It's a money bill, and so it is up for public debate. And we also have the Money Amendment Bill, which enables Parliament to send it back to the executive to say, we're not happy with this particular proposal, please change it. And that we are representatives, because we have representative democracy, so there should be some debate and discussion over what the budget table.
And Thokozile, there still will be. But is it not better to wait until the parties that make up the GNU are agreed with what is in the money bills, and then bring those money bills to Parliament, and then, if necessary, change them, which is entirely possible within our laws, rather than present a proposal which is a proposal from Treasury, which has some executive support, but not total executive support?
See, that brings to bear some of the debates about the role of Treasury in fiscal policy. And it's interesting that you say that it's a Treasury proposal, because for years and years and years and years, we've always been told that it is an executive proposal, and that is one that is presented by the executive, and the minister is merely the custodian of the budget. And so the interesting thing, and I mean, I could be convinced otherwise, that it was better that the horse trading takes place between the parties in closed meetings, as opposed to open-aired discussion and debate in Parliament. I think participation is always good and healthy. So it's interesting that we are seeing potentially the first signs of the Treasury's role in the fiscal policy being questioned, or at least having some questions being asked about the power of the minister to be able to dictate fiscal policy, as has been the case in the past.
Because what happened before Government of National Unity was the Treasury drew up proposals and drew them up on the basis of input from the various government departments, and then presented that to Cabinet, and because Cabinet was unitary, then there was no further discussion, and then it became cabinets. And maybe, the Minister of Water and Sanitation would have said, "Oi, we don't have nearly enough to do what we need to do. You need to go back," and Treasury may well have done that. But at the time that the budget was presented, Cabinet and Treasury would have been in agreement. What we have today is Cabinet and Treasury not being in agreement. The Minister in the Presidency saying that even ANC ministers weren't happy with the proposal.
So, this is what is so interesting about this moment politically, because the budget is not a neutral policy. It has huge political implications and huge political ramifications. Like you're saying, if there had been a 2% VAT increase proposal, it would have had a huge impact on the majority of South Africans, and not to mention potentially exacerbating the cost of living crisis that we're already experiencing. So the question is, what are the trade-offs that these new parties who are now coming to terms with governing and having to make decisions around fiscal policy, what are they willing to live with? Because, I've been monitoring the budget for a long time. I don't want to give my age away. But we've always had a situation where the finance minister will table his budget, and then the line ministers will then table their budgets. And they will usually say that they weren't given enough money by Treasury to be able to do what they wanted to do. And then come at the end of the year when they present their annual reports, they say, we weren't able to do what we wanted to do because we weren't given enough money by Treasury. Now, it might be the case that the DA does not want to be in a position where they are forced to say the same thing, that Treasury in their Government of National Unity did not give them enough money for education, for example, and then to have to return back at the end of the year for not delivering and being able to have to say, well, it didn't happen because we weren't given enough money, but they were in that Government of National Unity. So it really does shine a light on our budget process and our fiscal ecosystem. And this is research that we've been doing about kind of who holds the levers of power and decision making. And the exciting thing, although it does create some discomfort and uncertainty, is that we are finally beginning to see almost the curtains being drawn, and we're seeing what really needs to take place around fiscal decisions.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon. Thokozile Madonko is a researcher at the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies based at Wits University.